In 1908, a British shipping clerk named Edmund Morel noticed something strange in the cargo manifests crossing his desk. Ships leaving Europe for the Congo were loaded with guns and ammunition. Ships returning were filled with rubber and ivory worth millions. But there was one problem that kept him awake at night. Nothing was being shipped to the Congo to pay for these riches. No money, no goods, no trade items, just guns. Morel realized the horrifying truth. The only thing being traded for those fortunes was human lives. What he uncovered was so disturbing that European governments spent decades trying to bury it. Photography was banned. Journalists were threatened. Witnesses disappeared. But some secrets are too dark to stay hidden forever. Let's go back to 1884. Berlin, Germany. Inside an ornate conference room, 14 European nations gathered around a massive map of Africa. Over champagne and cigars, they played a game. A game where they literally drew lines on a map with rulers, dividing an entire continent among themselves. The Berlin Conference. They called it humanitarian. They said they were bringing civilization to Africa. Not a single African was invited. In just 3 months, they carved up 10 million square miles. Ancient kingdoms split in half. Enemy tribes forced together. Families separated by borders drawn by men who had never set foot in Africa. King Leopold II of Belgium walked away with a prize bigger than Western Europe itself, the Congo Free State. His personal playground. His private hell. But here's what they don't tell you in history class. Leopold never visited the Congo. Not once. He ruled 905,000 square miles of land and millions of people from his palace in Brussels, sending orders by telegram to men who saw Africans as nothing more than production units. The secret? This wasn't colonization for civilization. This was an industrial extraction operation. And the world's newest, most valuable commodity, rubber for car tires, bicycle wheels, industrial machinery, grew wild in the Congo's forests. There was just one problem. Africans didn't want to collect it. So Leopold's men found motivation techniques. The Congo Free State operated under a system so brutal that even other colonial powers, and remember, these were the people running apartheid and plantation slavery, were horrified. Here's how it worked. Villages were given rubber quotas. Impossible quota. If you didn't meet your quota, the force public, Leopold's private army of African soldiers led by European officers, would arrive. First, they'd take hostages, usually women and children, locked in compounds, starved, used as leverage. The men would desperately comb the forests for rubber vines, working until their hands bled from the latex. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The force public was given limited ammunition. They had to prove they hadn't wasted bullets hunting for food. So for every bullet fired, they had to provide evidence it was used for discipline. The evidence? A human hand. Smoke houses were built to preserve severed hands. Baskets of hands were delivered to white officials as proof of work done. Soldiers were punished if they couldn't produce enough hands. And then, because the cruelty could always get worse, soldiers realized they could save bullets. They started cutting off hands from living people. Children who couldn't work fast enough. Women who resisted. Men who tried to escape. A Belgian missionary named William Shepherd photographed villages where every single person was missing a hand. He wrote, "I have seen them, baskets full of hands. Hands of men, women, and children. But here's the secret they try to bury. This wasn't some rogue operation. This came from the top. Leopold's administrators sent memos about efficiency improvements and quota achievement strategies. They documented everything in meticulous bureaucratic detail, then spent decades trying to destroy those records. The death toll? Conservative estimates, 10 million people. Some historians say 15 million, half the Congo's population. Gone. And Leopold? He made roughly $1.1 billion in today's money. Built grand monuments across Belgium. Was called a humanitarian by newspapers across Europe. So how did Leopold keep this hidden for over 20 years? 3 words control the narrative. First, he banned all independent observers from the Congo. The only people allowed were his employees and carefully selected missionaries who supported him. Journalists who got too curious had their permits revoked. Some disappeared into the jungle. Second, he weaponized charity. Leopold created the International African Association, claimed it was fighting slavery. He donated to churches. He positioned himself as Africa's savior. The manipulation was brilliant. He convinced the world he was ending atrocities while secretly orchestrating them. But here's what broke the silence. That shipping clerk, Edmund Morel, couldn't let it go. He started investigating, publishing, making noise. Then came the photographs. An English missionary named Alice Harris took her camera into Congo villages in 1904. She photographed a man named Nsala sitting before a small bundle, his daughter's hand and foot, all that remained after the forced public killed her for not meeting the rubber quota. That photograph went viral, 1900 viral. It was published in newspapers worldwide. People couldn't look away. The image destroyed Leopold's carefully crafted lie. Mark Twain wrote a satirical pamphlet called King Leopold's Soliloquy. It became a bestseller. Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, wrote The Crime of the Congo. The public outrage became impossible to suppress. In 1908, the Belgian government finally forced Leopold to give up the Congo. He was paid 50 million francs, essentially paid for his crimes, and died the following year, never facing justice. But here's the darkest secret of all. The Congo was just the most documented horror. What about the places where there were no cameras? While the world focused on Leopold, other colonial powers were perfecting their own systems of extraction and control. In German Southwest Africa, modern Namibia, the Herero and Nama people rebelled against German colonizers in 1904. The German response? General Lothar von Trotha issued an extermination order. Every Herero, with or without a gun, with or without cattle, will be shot. They drove entire tribes into the Omahik Desert, sealed off waterholes, let them die of thirst. Those who survived were placed in concentration camps. Yes, concentration camps 30 years before the Holocaust, where medical experiments were conducted. Skulls were shipped to Germany for racial science research. Some are still in German museums today. Death toll, 80% of the Herero people, 50% of the Nama people. Germany didn't officially apologize until 2021. In French Equatorial Africa, the French built a railroad through the jungle. The Congo Ocean Railway, they called it. They needed 127,000 forced laborers. The work was so brutal, malaria, starvation, beatings, snake bites, exhaustion, that workers called it the Railroad of Death. For every kilometer of track laid, 64 Africans died. 17,000 dead for 511 kilometers of railroad. One French official wrote in his diary, "The corps of workers resembles a slave caravan. Many are in chains." The French government classified those documents for decades. In the Belgian Congo, yes, even after Leopold, forced labor continued under new names. Corvée labor, civil service. Villages were required to provide workers for rubber plantations, mines, and infrastructure projects. The system only officially ended in 1960. But here's what will shock you. These aren't ancient secrets from the 1800s. This was happening during the age of radio, during the first automobiles, while the Titanic sailed, while Einstein published his theories. The modern world was being built, literally, physically built on African bodies. So why don't we learn about this in school? Because the same governments that committed these atrocities wrote the history books. Colonial powers carefully crafted their narratives. We brought railroads. We brought medicine. We brought education. They framed colonialism as a civilizing mission, a favor they did for Africa. The violence? Downplayed as unfortunate excesses or isolated incidents. In Belgium, King Leopold II still has statues in public squares. His face was on Belgian currency until 2002. Children learned he was a great builder and humanitarian. The Congo horrors? A footnote, sometimes not mentioned at all. In Britain, school curricula focus on the benefits of the British Empire, the trains, the laws, the infrastructure, while glossing over the famines in India that killed millions, the concentration camps in Kenya, the massacres across Africa. France still maintains economic control over 14 African nations through the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency system that requires these countries to deposit their reserves in French banks. The colonization never fully ended. It just got rebranded. But here's the thing about buried secrets. They keep surfacing. In 2020, Black Lives Matter protests went global. In Belgium, protesters tore down Leopold II statues. In Britain, they toppled slave trader monuments. Young people started asking, why didn't we learn this? Archives are being opened. Descendants are demanding answers. African nations are asking for stolen artifacts to be returned, and discovering European museums have millions of them. The secrets are coming out, and they're forcing an uncomfortable reckoning with a question. If we don't fully acknowledge what was done, can we ever fully address what remains? Here's the darkest secret of all, and the one that connects everything. This wasn't ancient history. This was industrial-scale atrocity during the modern era. Documented, photographed, and systematically covered up. The wealth extracted from Africa, the gold, diamonds, rubber, ivory, and minerals, built European capitals, funded American industries, and laid the foundation for the modern global economy. The Congo's rubber fueled the automobile revolution. African gold backed European currencies. Diamonds from African mines still symbolize love and luxury. We're living in a world that extraction built, and the psychological scars run deeper than the physical ones. Borders drawn by Europeans still cause conflicts. Tribal divisions weaponized by colonizers still fuel violence. Economic systems designed to extract wealth still keep nations dependent. The Berlin Conference was 140 years ago. The Congo Free State ended 116 years ago. But drive through Kinshasa today, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and you'll see the legacy. A nation rich in resources but devastated by corruption, conflict, and poverty. The secret isn't just what happened. The secret is that we pretend it's over. Edmund Morel, that shipping clerk who exposed Leopold's regime, wrote something haunting in 1906. The horrors I have seen are not the result of individual cruelty. They are the inevitable outcome of a system. The question we have to ask ourselves now is, has the system really changed, or did it just learn to hide better? The colonization of Africa reshaped our entire world, but there's another chapter they buried even deeper. In the 1960s, as African nations fought for independence, former colonial powers deployed assassination teams, staged coups, and eliminated leaders who threatened their interests. Should that be the next video? Let me know in the comments what secrets you want exposed. And if this opened your eyes to something you never learned in school, share it. These stories deserve to be told.